Alright, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, tonight we got a special guest here on the radio station, and this individual is a former drummer for the legendary James Brown, and he also has his own band that's self-titled Tony Cook and the Party People. But right here, right now, we got Tony Cook live on the line, man. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing great, man. I gotta say, first and foremost, man, you are an absolute legend within the music industry, man. So thank you for just, accepting my inquiry and coming on the station here and giving us a bit of your time this evening.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure.
But I know you're a very busy guy, Tony, so I'm gonna dive right into this interview, man. But I gotta ask you, taking you back to the very beginning, man, like what actually made you decide to get into the music industry initially, man? Because you're such a gifted drummer.
Well, in the beginning, I was a teenager, floating around, trying to find my way. And, sometimes you stumble into things, right? And I had these two friends, we were growing up together. And we would venture off into different things, football and different stuff like that. And one of them, actually both of them, their father was a musician. And they wanted to start a band. So that's how it started. We started forming a band, and one of them played bass, and the other one played guitar. And, of course, I had to play the drums, right? I was led to the drums anyway. Yeah, and that's how that started, and we poked around here and there, and we finally learned how to play a little bit, right? And then we branched off, and they branched off and went more into football, and I stayed into the music thing, and I got some more partners together, right? And well, we went on, I guess we was about 10, 11 years old, learning how to play, right? And we started playing behind some famous blues stars. We decided, well, we need a manager, so we got this long time guy that we knew, Barefoot Wiggins. And he became our manager, and then he was like a lead singer with the band to a degree, So we go around and play a few gigs, and we would bag people like Z.Z. Hill and Jeter Davis, blues guys, around town. Augusta, I'm from Augusta, Georgia, right? So that's where all that happened, And like I say, we was like about 11, 12 years old. Of course we were going to school, and we play these gigs. Some of them late at night during the week, but mostly on the weekend, and we venture here and there, and so I stuck with it, and a few years later, I guess I was about 15 years old. We got called to do a block party for the local radio station, I forget the name to call this. It was James Brown's radio station, WRDW. That's it, WRDW. Right? And so we went down and played on the block party, but we didn't know Mr. Brown was coming down, and Mr. Brown came down and jumped up, and we played the Good Foot with him. And then he jumped off our stage and went to the other band and did a couple of numbers too, right? And we had a good time that weekend, Then a week or two later, I'm walking down the street, going to the music store, and he saw me walking down the street. He was in his limousine, and he pulled over, and he said, "You that young drummer that was playing with me last weekend?" And I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Brown." So we talked a bit. Yeah, we talked a bit. Dad, he said, "Well, now, how old are you?" And I told him, I said, "Well, I'm 15 years old." He said, "Son, you're too young, but you come back and you see me when you graduate, I have a job for you." And then he asked me, he said, "Where you going?" I said, "I'm going to the music store to get me some drumsticks." So he gave me a $20 bill and told me to go buy me some drumsticks. And so I didn't see him for a few years. As a matter of fact, I didn't see him until I graduated from high school, you know. And he and Bobby Bird came down to one of our gigs, and we just happened to be doing a gig with his comedian, Clay Tyson. We play a little bit between, and Clay, he come out and do jokes, right? And that's how Clay's gigs was. And he came to us. He said, the DJ told me that y'all the baddest band in town. So he said, "Well, we gonna sit here and listen to you for a while." So they listened to us, and then they sat in with us, and so then he said, "Well, I'm gonna have to hire y'all," you know. So he hired us as his come on band, right? And we didn't know at the time, but we was actually being hired as a spare band. He kept a spare band around, you know. Yeah. So anyway, he hired us, and we went to Macon with him that next week, I think, right? And then a few weeks passed, and he was restructuring his band, so he sent one of his managers, Clayton Filliard. He sent him looking for me, and Filliard told me, said, "The boss is looking for you. He wants you to come down to rehearsal." So so I came down to rehearsal. This is the end of 1975, the beginning of 1976, right? So I came down to rehearsal, and he hired me on the spot. And well, the next week we went into the studio and cut a few records, and then the next couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, we went to Mexico. Mexico City was my first gig, right? And we did a tour around Mexico. That was my first week on the road with him. So anyway, I worked with him, off and on for 30 years, right? Sometime I'd leave and go play with other people, right? And he always saved a spot for me so I could come back, you know. I went off for about a year and with Etta James, and then I went to Europe at the beginning of the 80s. And while I was actually living in Europe, and while I was doing that, what I would do, I'd meet them when they come to Europe, and then sometime off and on, I'd come back and meet them in the States, you know. But when I moved to Europe, that's when I started forming Tony Cook and the Party People. And production company, and we would record a few tracks here and there, and then Half Moon got involved with us, right? And so anyway, we dropped a few singles with on the Osceola label here and there, and then we started dropping a few records on the Half Moon label. First record on the Half Moon label was Do What You Want to Do, right? And then came On the Flow, right? We did that. That was like we recorded that the end of '83 and released it in 1984, right? And it's still around today. A lot of folks call it the granddaddy of the house music, right? Yeah, and I've had a few other records here and there, you know, but I'm still kicking. I'm still around, right?
But the one thing I gotta ask you, Tony, is because I remember reading. Me personally, I wasn't there to experience it, but I read that in 1978 you actually joined the Etta James Band at the Jazz Festival in Switzerland, where you guys actually opened up for the Rolling Stones. I was wondering if you can tell our listeners a bit more about that amazing night, and of course, did you get the opportunity to kick it with the Stones after the concert?
Well, actually, what happened? Matter of fact, in 1978, Ella had a tour. That's when I went and worked with her for about a year, and the tour actually was around the states. We toured with the Stones around the states, right? And we had a ball with Charlie and the fellas. We really had a ball, you know. But when we went to Europe, to do the festivals, right? We went and that summer, June and July that summer, and we did the Montreal Festival. That was the main festival that we did, and while we was at the festival, we did Ella's show, and Ella I think she went to London. That was our next gig, and she was good about trying to make sure we kept playing and made money. She tell us, she said, "Y'all stay here, and y'all make that money." So the festival wanted us or some of us to play behind James Booker. So we stayed over to play behind James Booker, right? And we played. We did his show, and we also did a video and an album out of the whole thing, you know. And later on that night, or the next night, I got a chance to play with Taj Mahal and Willie Mayborn. We just did a little jamming because Taj Mahal's band was late or they didn't come, something like that, you know. But then we went on to England and met back up with Ella, right? And we stayed over there for about a week or two, and then came back to the States and finished doing the rest of the dates we had with the Rolling Stones.
And I gotta say, that must have been surreal, especially back then, because the Stones are even huge today, but they were even much more bigger back in the 70s, man. Like, they were the band to see.
Oh, yeah. They some of the gigs wasn't even announced. They would announce them the next day or that night, right? And we go to them and the place would be packed. They had that song, I think it was Miss You out. Right? It had like a disco beat, and that was different for them. But the but the crowd loved it. Crowd loved it. Yeah, yeah. They was good. They was good guys. They was really good guys. Yeah, and Charlie, he had a really good rapport with me.
And also, as well, going into 1983, another monumental concert you had the opportunity to be a drummer for was actually the James Brown and B.B. King concert at Beverly Theater, man, out there in Los Angeles. I was wondering, from what you can remember, man, what was it like partaking in one of the most famous concerts within music history?
Well, it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure, and you know how it go. Sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time. You know, and that was one of the times that I was in the right place at the right time. Because you know, like I told you, you know, during those days, I would be back and forth from Europe to the States, and I had just came back to the States about a month before that happened, you know. So I was in the right place at the right time.
And also, as well, going into the 90s, because I remember you mentioned a few moments ago about how yourself and the Party People got connected, but in 94, you actually released Tony Cook and the Party People album Back to the Old School, which in my personal opinion will forever be one of the most monumental records within music. But I have to ask you, what is the inspiration behind that amazing record, and is it still available to be purchased today?
Well, you can find it on Amazon and different sites. You can still find it. You know, well, you know, we just decided it was time to put another release out. You know, I wanted to go a little bit more old school funk type on that. You know, more than you know, other than more dance music. So we went kind of more old school funk on that. You know, yeah. Then we had some great slow songs, like a classic. It's a coincidence on that particular CD. I was just listening to it the other day, and I had forgot. I had did a version of "Let's Straighten It Out," Lattimore, right? And in the late '90s, Lattimore's manager called me, and he wanted me to do some gigs with him, you know. So I agreed to do the gigs with him, and I intended to do about 3 months with him. I ended up working with him off and on for about 3 years, you know. Yeah, and it was a coincidence that I had done the song, and I liked the song. I always have liked the song. And then I got to play with Lattimore himself that particular song. And he's a great guy. We call him Lat. I talk to him off and on all the time now. You know, he's a good kid. Good guy to know. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also, as well, in 2010, Stone Throw Records actually released your Back to Reality anthology, and I was wondering, what made you guys decide to actually release an anthology? My apologies, of all your guys' work, and of course, where can we actually purchase that today? Because I think that would be just a phenomenal collector's item to have.
Yeah. Well, again, it's out there. You can always buy it from Stone's Throw, download MP3s from Stone's Throw, right? Yeah, and there's always copies floating around here. Now you can always go to eBay and find stuff like that, you know. That's still floating around. But what happened with that? Wolf got in touch with me through
I remember that. Yeah,
Yeah.
some fun times I had on MySpace, man. Fun times.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, he got in touch with me through MySpace. I don't mess around with the social media stuff too much, but I noticed that message. You know, and so we got to talking, right? And he told me he wanted to do a collection or release of some of my old stuff. You know. And so that's how we got together, and that's how I got to meet him. So anyway, we was trying to find some stuff to put out. He wanted some old releases that I had never released before, you know. So so between 80, 81, 82, 83, I had recorded some tracks on different artists, and I never released those tracks. You know, when we were asked to do on the flow, we got kind of sidetracked, and so we never did get to those old tracks. You know, so I hadn't heard those tracks for years. You know. So I got tapes and went out to California, and we went to a studio, and to my surprise, the next day or two, we were listening to the tracks, and it sounded like they did when I recorded them. It's some of the tracks I had forgot about, you know. Yeah. So that's how that came about.
And I gotta say as well, it must have been a surreal moment for you just being able to hear these long lost Tony Cook tracks, man. It just shows, man, that after so many years, man, something can always sound so new.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. And that was things that we was looking at because they sound so fresh, you know. Yeah. And we recorded them back then during those times, but they sound like they fit the time that we re-released them. They were right on time. Mm-hmm.
And I gotta ask you, Tony, because I know you said at the beginning of the interview, that you're still here. I don't know if you're still doing music or not, but do you have any new projects currently in the works that you want to let our listeners know about? Well, we still have you here live on the radio station airwaves.
Well, I'm always doing stuff, Yeah, I do have some tracks that I'm working on right now, but I don't like to talk about stuff until I get ready to release it, because I don't like to talk about something and then all of a sudden something happens, and then something is delayed, and then we don't get it out, But I have some stuff in the works right now. I also have a agent up there in Toronto, Anika. Right, she works with me a lot on different stuff, So we're getting some stuff together right now. Yeah.
And I gotta say, I'm most definitely excited to hear some brand new Tony Cook. And like the old saying goes, good things always come to those who wait. So us fans out there are most definitely gonna sit back and be patient for the most anticipated release.
Great, yeah, great.
But Tony, before we part ways, I know you said you're not too big into the social media, but for the individuals that want to follow the legendary Tony Cook, how can they go about actually following you on social media? If you can, drop them social media handles quickly.
Well, there's two Facebook pages you can find me on, right? And you can always go to my website, TonyCookMusic.com, and you can always find me there.
And I gotta say, first and foremost, Tony, thank you for years of amazing music, man. Thank you for creating such amazing classics that so many individuals enjoyed for so many years, man. Thank you for everything you did, and we're most definitely looking forward to even more Tony Cook music in the future.
Well, thank you, because we couldn't get stuff out there if it wasn't for you DJs. Y'all make it happen. Always have made it happen.
And I gotta say, I appreciate that, Tony. I just like spinning real music, man, and then that's what you've been bringing to the table for so many years, man. So if you keep making it, I know for sure us DJs we're gonna keep spinning it.
That's a bit. That's a bit. That's a bit.
But I gotta say, Tony, thank you so much for just giving us a little bit of your time this evening, and most definitely have yourself a wonderful night. And I'm looking forward to those new releases.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. Have yourself a wonderful night, Tony.
Thank you. All right, you too. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.